Welcome to Wednesday night's Name Tags Chat podcast. Today I'm with Jason Lalla. Jason and I were on the U.S. disabled ski team together. He has one of each medal. So he has a gold medal from Nagano, a silver, and a bronze from Salt Lake City in 2000. In Nagano, he was actually part of a U.S. sweep. So as he was telling me before we got on, he said, "Yeah, it was great, but it seemed like I was just racing against the guys that I'd raced against back in the U.S." So was it anticlimactic for you to actually win that gold medal in Nagano in 1998?
No, not at all. I mean, it was. I jokingly say that, but not even close because we talked earlier, and I was a rookie. It was, I think, one of my first international competitions. Leading up to it, the way everything was at that time, it was 5 people on the team in my class, which was the LW2, meaning I ski on a single ski, standing up with outriggers. So there was 5 people from the U.S. competing for 3 spots, and I got bumped from the downhill, which I was pretty upset about. Well, and my parents were over there, and my aunt was there, and I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't going how I thought it was going to go. And then so it's a two-run event with combined times, and after that first run, I came down and I was in second place, which I was kind of shocked at, So then it was like, okay, I just got to stay standing up. So, but regardless, it was not anticlimactic at all. And Japan, that was just awesome.
Japan was awesome. Can I draw a little bit of a picture for our audience? So you said you were the rookie. You came in. Menino was the guy who'd been there forever. Was the gold standard in a lot of ways, and he was like a one-legged Arnold Schwarzenegger, basically.
I believe at the time, his quad, his leg, measured 30 inches in circumference.
30 inches in circumference, just one.
One leg, yeah, which is bigger than my waist, I think, probably at the time.
And then you had Monty Meyer, who was from Minnesota, who was a farm kid from Minnesota, so like farm strong, like just he was another stout, strong guy. And then you had Kosick, who was one of the other kids, one of the other 3 trackers. We call what Jason's class was 3 trackers because they have 2 outriggers and 1 ski. And Kosick, he seemed like he was coming out of the weight room all the time. I mean, like Kosick's constantly coming out of the weight room. And as I remember, you were like the stick figure version of these guys. I mean, you were the skinny guy compared to these guys, but then going to Nagano, you were just getting this angulation that nobody else was getting. It was eye-opening, and you had to go through a fairly long process to get there, right? So when did that breakthrough happen for you? And when that happened, did you think, hey, these guys might be a little bit bigger than me, but I think I might be able to take them down? When did that happen?
Well, as I had said earlier, you had, prior to your injury, you had grown up ski racing. And I grew up playing hockey. I was like Happy Gilmore. I'm a hockey player. But because of my background in skating and we did so many drills on a single skate through cones, frontwards and backwards and things of that sort, that transitioning onto a ski was relatively easy in a sense. Like my balance was good and everything else, but I did not know anything about ski racing. And I was like a Yahoo skier, just go as fast as I can all the time, which is how I ended up in this scenario. But
we'll get to some of that.
Yeah. The breakthrough, and I remember there was a camp in Waterville Valley, and I think you have family members that volunteered there for years. And there was a camp there, and Greg Menino was supposed to be there, and Sarah Will, and I can't remember if you were or not, but Mike Brown, who was the coach at the time. So it was like, all these top guys. I'm like, well, I'm going to go to that.
So this is 97 then, right? So Nagano was 98. Was this 97?
No, that was 94, 95.
94, 95. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So basically I went to this camp and I told myself, like, if I'm going to do this, I want to be the best. And at the time, all you guys were living in Vail. And so as naive as I was, I'm like, well, I want to be the best. I got to train with the best. So I got to move to Vail. So I literally just, like, the day after the camp ended, or the day that the camp ended, Mike Brown said, if you're ever out in Vail, any of you guys, you can join and train with us. I met with him afterwards. I said, I hope you're serious, because I'm leaving tomorrow. My car, everything's packed. I'll be there in like 5 days. And due to Brownie's organizational skills, you know how that kind of went. But we had an event at Winter Park, and my times, because I chose to kind of chase you guys and train with the best, I knew in training and everything, my times were getting closer and closer. And while I was miles away to begin with, they were getting closer. And we had, I think, the 97 season, we went to Winter Park for a race, and it might have been the Columbia Crest or whatever it was. And
right, Columbia Crest Cup, yeah.
I believe I beat Greg in a Super G, and he was a speed event skier. And as you said, like, they literally jokingly called me Stick Boy, because if his quad was 30 inches around, mine was like, 22 maybe.
I was going to go teens, but okay. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
When you first showed up in Vail, you were really skinny.
Yeah.
You definitely put on some weight between, but yeah.
A little bit. And I remember one of the staff members at the time, who everybody called Stoney, he was a Vietnam vet who had been with the team for years, and everybody knew he was kind of a hard ass straight shooter. And he's like, and I was going to the gym. I've never been able to put on bulk, and he was like, you got to get stronger. He's like, he was getting his ass kicked, and then he just decided he was going to get stronger than everybody else. You got to do that. Well, I'm trying, coach. And, but I always kind of felt, and in the later years, like skiing with Monty, like, I always felt that my strength to weight ratio was pretty good. So I was skinny, but I wasn't carrying any body fat either. And so like it worked. Whatever it was, it worked.
Well, it was the angulation, though. I mean, the angulation was totally different. I remember we must have done a camp that year at Loveland. I think it was early season camp at Loveland. And I remember watching you ski and going, wow, that looks different. Yeah. And maybe it was right before we left. I don't remember.
It could have been. And it was, that transition, for people that are maybe involved in ski racing today, you probably hear stories about straight skis. And that was right when I started, is when equipment started to transition into quote unquote shaped side cut skis. Well, now things have kind of gone back the other way. But I struggled, like when I started my racing career, I was on a 205 slalom ski and like a 220, I think, downhill ski. And then the trend was a more side cut, which allowed you to make bigger angles, I think, but you also maybe didn't have to be quite as strong, perhaps. You just got that thing on edge, and they would come around like it was great, and that was huge. So while I started on a 205 slalom ski and a 220 downhill ski, when I finished my career, due to the rule changes, I was on a 165 slalom ski and a 205 downhill ski. So, I mean, that's how much things had changed. But that equipment revolution, if you will, which goes back to Bodie Miller and all of that, really made a big difference.
Yeah, it allowed you to get those angles and to run the line that you wanted to run and be able to hold it. You didn't necessarily have to be as crazy strong to make the ski bend as you had before.
Exactly. I didn't weigh a lot, and those guys, I'm sure, were strong. Yeah, they were stronger than I was. So yeah, that whole, you got to drive the front of the boot, get the ski to bend. I was like, that's not really working. But with that side cut, you could make almost more of a lateral move, and it was skiing clean basically. And yeah, it was huge. It worked.
This program is based on our educational program, And I often say to the kids, the greatest risk you take is taking no risk at all. Like when you're going through school, if you never try, if you're following everybody all the time, it's so easy to finish school and somebody says, "Hey, Jason, you can do whatever you want to do." And you're like, "I don't really know what I want to do because I've been following everybody the whole time." You were great when it got really nasty too. Like when there were bigger risks, that's when you really enjoyed it. I remember you guys did a downhill, an able-bodied downhill at Snow Basin. And so this is prior to the 2002 games.
Yep.
And what I think it was, because there were a bunch of you, and I think Kosick was the one who broke the streak or something, as a story as I remember hearing it, that there were like 30 kids in a row who'd all blown out. Yeah. And then this one-legged dude came down and actually finished the course. And the coaches were like, "What's going on? Like this guy, he has one leg, he just finished it." But I remember you saying that you absolutely loved that. Like that was the women's course at Snow Basin, which was a real downhill course, and the conditions were all chewed up. You guys are running at the back of the pack, right? And what made it that when you had to take the risk, why were you better?
Well, as I said before, and we'll probably get into it a little bit more, but I lost my leg due to a motorcycle accident. And we go, "Oh, that's too bad." I'm like, "No, it's not a sad story." Like, I'm an idiot. I was going 100 and something miles an hour, passing like 5 cars. Like and at that time, I was 18 years old, and I'd grown up riding motorcycles, and it was like, that wasn't scary to me. Like I liked going fast, and I liked taking those risks. And even my perspective has dramatically changed more with age, not even necessarily the accident. But point is, even when I got into ski racing, like I knew nothing about ski racing, like nothing. I was smaller, no experience, but I was just like, and I am competitive. So it's like, in my brain, I'm going to get into people's heads. I'll just be crazier than anybody else. Like I'll be the one that I don't care. Like I'm just going to send it, and someone's going to be like, well, whatever it was that I thought might distract or disrupt someone, but I didn't mind that.
How does that work? Because I remember you do. I mean, I remember it really when it got nasty. I mean, it is when you said, "This is it." And I remember also when you showed up in Vail, you introduced yourself and said, I'm going to be an extreme skier. And everybody went,
probably.
Okay. Like, cool. Good. Who is this guy? What's going on? But how can you perform in those times when it is scary?
Well, I mean, so now my son ski races, right? And I have a 16-year-old son and I have a 13-year-old daughter. And so they ski race. He plays lacrosse. She plays soccer. He mountain bikes. So we do various different sports, and they're outdoor sports. And I've always kind of felt like those days when you're training and skiing, like what's the worst? When it's raining. Like who skis in the rain? That's just stupid. Why? Because it's miserable. You can't see, and everybody's miserable. And as soon as you're miserable, and that gets into your mindset, you're done. And I've always kind of felt like you got to learn to love that, and you just need to love it a little bit more than everybody else that hates it, because they're already done. And if you can convince yourself that I love this and this is not going to affect me, you have an advantage there. And I think that holds true for anything. You look at like military guys and that mindset and where they perform and where they go mentally to get through that stuff. I mean, it's your mind and your mindset really truly dictates your success, your ability to succeed. So that was kind of it. Like, it was miserable. Yeah, everybody was miserable. But if everybody's miserable and everybody's scared, and I just tell myself, well, going to be the one, I'm going to try not to be miserable and scared. There's risk involved, but.
Is that the story that you tell yourself, that, hey, everybody else is miserable, I'm just going to be the one who's not miserable? And it's almost like it just sort of fits, like the pieces kind of fit, and you go, oh, okay, now I'm happy. Now I'm ready to go charge because everybody else is miserable.
Right. Yeah. And I hated it just as much as everybody else. But you just gotta, of course nobody loves that. But there is there is a degree of that. And part of it too, again, when I was injured, all of my friends, like when I moved out west, out to Colorado, early on, because I was kind of there twice, which is, it's kind of a long story, so I don't know if we want to get into that. But I had a lot of friends from back east in New Hampshire that had moved out there, and they were all snowboarders. And I actually snowboarded for like 2 years before I got hurt, partly because I convinced my parents that while we didn't have enough money and buying ski equipment was really expensive, like I wouldn't outgrow a snowboard. Like I just have to get one, and then that'll be it. So anyways, but that whole snowboarder mindset it's very different. And the whole, that comment about, oh, I don't know if I said I want to be an extreme skier. I probably said I'm more of an extreme skier, but still makes you sound like a clown in the ski racing world. But it was like all these guys, that's all we did was like, we would go from one jump to one cliff to one wind lip and all day long, and jump off things and try to do 360s and backflips and all of that kind of stuff. And so that was also, I think, what gave me confidence in the sense that when those conditions, that's what I skied in, was crud and junk and trying to do that kind of stuff. So it didn't bother me, I guess, as quite as much as someone who maybe grew up. I mean, I don't know how much free skiing you did as a kid, but these days it seems far more common that, kids that train in ski racing, it's like they put on their boots and they run the course and then they're done. It's like, oh, I don't want to ski bumps. I don't want to do this. And there's advantages to doing that stuff, and there's your balance and everything else, and it improves from doing that. So at least that's what I thought.
I'm with you. I always thought that the mountain was the best teacher. And you go out there and you ski everything on the mountain. You're talking about crud, skiing powder, skiing bumps, those kinds of things. For me as a mono skier, and I look at it now, and I've said it to numerous people who are skiing in the Paralympics, because the mono skiers now go last in slalom.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it doesn't even make sense for you to go and run a course. Like go ski bumps, This is especially like a place like Sochi or something like that, where it was so soft and it was just so skied in that it was just, you're going into one bomb hole after another kind of thing and trying to get out. How does it, you said you took some unnecessary risks as a kid. And I think you were talking about at one point that like when you had your accident, that it was trying to break your record going from your house to the lake or something like that or whatever. And obviously I think that there are some significant changes that you've made since then. How does that kind of stuff inform the way that you teach your son, who's a ski racer too, reining him in, but wanting him to take the risks at the same time?
Well, thankfully he's a little bit more calculated than I was, and which is, like I said, thank God. So he's the kind, but it in some ways it holds him back, and I see it and I know it, because he has to be absolutely sure that he can do it before he'll do it, like, which is safer, absolutely, but you're not maybe pushing the threshold quite as much. Now he still does very, very well. He's good. He's a very good ski racer. Huge angles. That's what everybody. It's funny. That's what everybody says. All his coaches say. Nobody makes angles like he does. He's just huge angles, and he's fast. But yeah, I mean, it's a fine line. You listen to They had an event at Sunapee a couple of years ago, Bodie Fest, and I ended up, racing against him for this fundraiser thing. But he did a Q&A for like an hour or so afterwards, and he talks about that. And if you listen to pro athletes, especially speed skiers, they talk about, that risk. I was willing to take more risk here, or this is where, and it's everything is so good. And as you well know, you look at like how like training regimens and the equipment and the diet and the science behind it. And like I joked earlier, I was like, like Chris raced on a pogo stick. I mean, the thing was deadly. It was an ejection seat. It was a single swivel launch pad with a shock underneath it that nobody knew how to tune. So everything you did in that thing was a risk. But now everything is so dialed and everybody is so good that you have to be willing to get uncomfortable. And that's either conditions or your line or whatever that is. But that separates that last final percent. That's the guys that are stuck at the NORAM level versus the guys that are at the World Cup level.
Guys who are winning. It's an interesting thing because it translates into the rest of our lives too, right? I mean, the whole idea of skiing well is this idea of letting go. And it's really hard because what happens is each time you come to the bottom, you meet with your coach. The coach tells you what you did well, what you didn't do well. So then you're going back up to the top with this idea of perfection. It doesn't happen in any other sport, really. I mean, you might get a little bit of coaching here and there, if you're playing lacrosse or if you're playing baseball or something. But skiing, it's like, okay, you get that whole lift ride and you're like, all right, no, I'm going to do it this time. And it's so easy to be in your head, but then to let go. And to let go and sort of let the athletic side of who you are. I often talk about it. For me, training was about teaching instinct. And if I could teach my body what to do, then when it mattered, then I could just forget it and just go. And it's an interesting thing. And I think I remember this correctly. I think your son was racing in like U14 or something like that. And they had like the obstacle course part of it. Is this right? And so he crashed like the first run or something like that, and then had to go through. And I don't know if this was your idea or if it was his idea or how it worked, but I think I remember you saying that he went and threw a helicopter off the bump and just kept going. Like, yeah, you'll get recognized kind of thing. It's kind of, you grew up as a hockey player. Who is it? I mean, like Bobby Orr and Derek Sanderson, right? Derek Sanderson's father, they were going to some like junior event right before they were getting drafted. And his father said to him, he's like, well, they're going to remember Bobby Orr and the guy who gets in the fight with Bobby Orr. And that was kind of
right. That's like the prison mentality. Like, you go to jail, you're supposed to punch the biggest guy, I guess. Who knows? But so you touched on something, and that's something, again, because I coach and have kids, and I think it is a very important message. And so I've coached lacrosse as well as ski racing. You talked about training as teaching your body how to react, like muscle memory, basically. And one of the big things, and again, it goes for every aspect in your life, is that no matter what you do and how you do it, the more you do it, you're teaching your body you're teaching yourself to do it that way. So point being, if you train half-ass, you're teaching, if you don't go 100%, now there are times where you're supposed to, there is a bit of an ebb and flow there.
A progression sometimes where you're going from here to there and taking the logical steps, right?
But if every time you go out there and, for ski racing, for example, you just get in line, okay, it's my turn, you go down, you go through, you don't get in that gate and focus and breathe and think about the spots that you're going to nail and whatever that is, that's what you're training yourself to do. And you can't expect, if that's what your training regimen is on game day, race day, whatever it is, that all of a sudden you're going to flip the switch and it's going to work. It won't. And so, I'm a competitive person sometimes to a degree where I'm not in competition. I'm not a great person necessarily. And I was that way in hockey. I could be nasty, but I'm competitive, and again, it's whether it's studying for a test or whatever that is. The more you do something, that's your default. That's where you're going to end up, basically.
And the more you do it well, the more you ingrain that. So that is your default, where then you don't have to think about it. Whereas if you've been half-assing it, then you come in and go, okay, so, that's where you're going up the lift and you see somebody do it well. And you go, oh, yeah, I should do it like that today. Yeah, good luck. That's going to work out well.
Yeah, you might get lucky. But as a rule, that doesn't work. And so that's, I try to ingrain that, with kids, my own kids that I coach, is like, look, you don't need to be serious all day long. Like, you can ride the lift. This is supposed to be fun, but there's got to be a time where you buckle down, focus in, because that's what's going to pay off in the end.
There is a fun aspect of it too. I skied with a couple of guys at Middlebury, and these guys like Nate and Davey Bryan.
Yeah. Yep.
And Davey, I remember Davey and we're running GES or whatever, and there was a bump in the middle, and he'd just go and just pop the bump in the middle of a GES, just pop it. And you're thinking, oh, no, you gotta press it. You gotta stay in contact. And it's like, there are times also that's actually good training, because it's putting you into a bad position.
Right.
And in races, you're often getting put into a bad position. It's like, have fun with it and do what you're supposed to do, get after it. But sometimes it's also utilize that. How do your kids that you coach, how do they look at you? Like, there's this one-legged dude showing up who's gonna coach them. I'm like, what's up with that? Who is this guy?
Well, it's always kind of funny because I coach the U14 age group, so I have most of the kids for 2 years, and some of them, it's Mount Sunapee. It's a small mountain. It's a big program, but my kids are in the program, and I kind of assume everybody kind of knows, but not everybody knows. And when I say that, so oftentimes when I coach, I don't take my prosthesis off. So I'm wearing full-length pants. I have one ski boot on, and I'm skiing with poles on one ski. And you get these looks, and the lift attendants or what happened to your other ski? And I always have some smart aleck answer for that. But yeah, and then once they kind of realize, like, all of a sudden one day I'll show up and the leg's off, and okay, now I'm really skiing,
Get your outriggers instead of poles.
Yeah, the kids are always, I can always tell. You can feel the looks kind of, but then they see, I still ski well, and then they just try to coach them to the fact that, like, all the principles are the same. It's like, we're still, whether I'm doing it on one ski or two skis, it is hard because of a visual image is obviously different, but the principles and the concepts are all the same.
Well, also some things you can't get away with that they can get away with, because you, being a one-legged skier, you have what effectively is your outside ski, and then you make the next turn on what is your inside ski. And as we grew up on straight skis, you really were not supposed to ski on your inside ski. We'd lift the ski up oftentimes, and you'd try to be on almost all your weight on the outside ski, where you have to do physically, you have to contort your body and be technically more sound to be able to make that turn on the inside ski. Can they see that?
Well, yeah, I think some of them, again, you're dealing with 12 and 13-year-olds.
A wide range of kids, right? Yeah.
I try to make up all the excuses. But you're right. I mean, on a single ski, I've thought about it over the years, and even early on, it's like you're actually skiing probably a longer distance for that same line, whether you're on a mono ski or a stand-up single ski, because where you can unweight in your base of stance is, let's say, a foot. You're transitioning onto that next ski, you actually have to get let's just say our bindings. We have to get it to that foot distance. So on every single turn, you're really skiing like an extra foot, probably.
Right.
I would imagine. So, but to your point, yeah, like getting in the back seat, recovering from there is far more difficult. And so now by profession, I am a prosthetist. I make and fit artificial limbs, legs, and things like that. And I have a patient of mine who we started seeing when he was 15. And he was one of the top ranked skiers in the East. Went to Burke. He was good. I saw a video.
Burke Mountain Academy, one of the best places. Yeah.
He was legit. And he ended up losing his leg skiing. Ended up getting cut off and hit a tree. So I coached him for a few years, and he never was able to make, for a while, the goal was to get on the U.S. team. And he could never make that leap because he admittedly, growing up, he skied very wild, but he was able to make recoveries. And he also very competitive. He just never would back off enough to allow himself to learn how to make that recovery, if you will,
to be in control and technically sound. Yeah.
You can't pull yourself out of certain positions just with one leg. It's just, it doesn't work. And it was also interesting because, as you know, in the adaptive world, a lot of people come from like no ski racing background. And they're like, they don't know how to ski. So as they're learning how to ski, their speed is increasing and their body is adjusting to be able to adapt to that. In this kid's case, he could arc a ski like no other. I mean, like from day one. But because he could go, like he'd be the fastest kid on the mountain, I swear. Like probably like world-class fastest kid in the Paralympic classes probably for 3 gates. And then it was just a problem. Yeah, because he get going so fast and he just didn't have that recovery ability. So anyways, yeah, there's some increase, there's a lot of challenges with that.
A lot of challenges to coaching. You said before that sometimes you give the smart aleck responses to the lift attendants. And I think the first time I had seen 3 trackers like at nationals, I went to my first nationals, I went to a few races and I saw them, but I didn't really interact with them until I went to New Zealand the summer after my first year skiing. And I went to New Zealand with the group from Winter Park. And I was on a lift with Matt Gariak, who was he's a 3-tracker from California who skied on the US team. And we're going up and some guy turned to him and Matt's there, one leg amputated above the knee. And the guy said to him, what happened? And Gariak, without missing a beat, said, Frisbee accident. and that was that. It ended the conversation. He didn't give any follow-up answers, anything. And the guy's just like, what do you mean? Like razor blades on the Frisbee? Like what
right.
How does this work? What's the most bizarre answer that you've given somebody when they give? Because sometimes it's like what happened and the question is what happened to you? It's not like who are you? It's like what happened to you? I want to know your story right now before I even know who you are. And so you've given some smart aleck responses. What is the best one?
I guess it just depends on how uncomfortable I want to make them. So like probably the most uncomfortable, would be just, what do you mean? What do you mean what happened? Like, because they don't know about your leg. Do you mind talking about it? Yes. That's not being a jerk. And then usually I lighten up. I mean, I don't get too crazy. I know everybody's like, oh, the shark story. I was bit by a shark or this and that. If parents are around and a little kid asks, sometimes I might say, well, I didn't study very well in school. And would tell mom, like,
poor kids.
You can thank me later when that kid's got the college scholarship because he's now petrified. If he doesn't study enough, his leg's gonna fall off.
I mean, for us, it's this program is called Nametags, and Nametags is about getting beyond the labels that we
Right.
put on somebody, or put on ourselves or somebody else. And in a
Right.
lot of ways, that's what that's what this thing is. Like, hey, what happened to you? And you're like, well, which time? Which I had somebody say to me at one point. I was at an event and going down the elevator, and this woman said to me, she said, "We will cure you." And I was like, all right, and I knew
What do I have?
where she was going with it. I was like, well, which part of me are you going to cure? Because I mean, they're like, can you cure like my ability to focus? Like, I'd love to be able to focus better. If you could cure that, that would be absolutely awesome.
Right.
But you're thinking, oh, okay, if you can walk, then you're good. And so you did say that you would be an extreme skier. Do you put skiing at Mike Wigley's up with the gold medal in Nagano? How do those two things compare, and how do skiing in a movie? And tell us what movies you've been in and what you've done, because that was pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, it was really good. I was very fortunate, and like I said, I was naive, and but a lot of things kind of aligned for me that really allowed me to succeed. And it is that story, like you can't do it by yourself, and it was absolutely true. So what had happened was, like I said, I moved out to Vail, right? I'm going to go where you guys were, the best guys in the world. That's where I'm going. So I was living there and training there, and probably because I announced that I was going to be an extreme skier. But what Greg Menino, again, he was the best guy in the world as a stand-up one-legged skier. That's who I was chasing. That's who I wanted to be. He very shortly, I think, after I moved there, blew out his knee. So I think the team, or at least he, had been involved with Warren Miller Films in the past, and they had contacted him and said, we're filming in Copper, which, for those that don't know, Copper and Vail, which is where I lived, they're like 20 minutes away. It's right next door, kind of. They were filming in Copper, and they wanted him to be in this segment. He said, I can't do it. I blew out my knee. But there's this new guy who he's a pretty good skier, because he'd see me ski bumps and all that stuff. So, like I said, I was always like taking those risks. So I get a call. Or I came home living ski bum style with like four roommates, and there's a note on our counter that my roommate wrote that said, Max Burby from Warren Miller Films called. Call him. Now, in our living room, we had an Endless Winter poster, I think was the movie, on the wall. Producer Max Burby. And I'm like, this is my roommates, like, hold the name off the poster, like messing with me. And anyways, long story, a little bit shorter. They told me, no, this is legit. You got to call this guy. And I did, and it was legit. And they said, yeah, we got your name from Greg. We're filming in Copper. We'd love to have you. Can you come over? I'm like, when? Like tomorrow morning? Like, yeah. So I went over there.
So hold on, back up a little bit. Can you describe Warren Miller movies, Warren Miller, like the whole character of ski films?
Yeah, Warren Miller films were like these iconic films. I would dare say they're probably the original ski films. And Warren Miller himself, you talk about taking risks and things of that sort. Like his story, he moved to Sun Valley, Idaho. He lived in this little trailer in the parking lot and was drawing caricatures, selling them like cartoon pictures to people, to tourists. Raised enough money, he got a camera, started filming and making movies. And he narrates during these movies. And every year, to this day, a new Warren Miller film comes out.
And it's like the start of the ski season for most everybody, right? When it tours around, the Warren Miller film comes, it's like, okay, ski season has started.
They're like starting now, like November. And it's like, there's these big events and at these theaters, and everybody goes, and, ski enthusiasts are going, and they're coming out of there charged and psyched to ski. There are locations all over the world. So that was like the film. Now, since then, there's other film companies that do even more extreme stuff, probably. But anyways, that was like the flagship premier movie maker.
Well, he was a storyteller too, right? I mean, Warren just had the he just had the dry wit, and he would narrate every film, and you know, you'd get like the segment of the woman wearing the fur boots or whatever, and one's barking at another in the you know, in the movie kind of thing, obviously with the voiceover or whatever. So it's funny stuff where like the guy at the top of the lift attendant who everybody's falling, and he's like clearing people out of the way, and so there's a funny part, but then there's an extreme part. And they showed them on Vail television, all the old ones on a
Yes.
loop. You would see all of them on the local TV, the local cable television channel. So you got asked to be part of the industry. Like this is it. This is as big as it gets.
So yes, and so how this all plays out and is part of what allowed me to succeed is I get this call, I go over there, and they don't know me at all, like, you know, and we're skiing, and the whole first part. Here's one thing too for people that are watch these ski films. You think, oh, it's great. It's like you get to ski all day long and get paid. And the very first scene that I did, we literally hiked. It was practically a snowbank. I mean, it was probably 40 feet. It was above the lift. Nobody in the world would ski there because it was like a snowdrift. But the lighting was right and everything else. And they literally had us hiking up to the top of this and making 2, maybe 3 turns, like hop turns almost. This wind would kick up the snow, and they're filming, and a great shot. So first of all, they kept telling me, they kept giving me these outs, like, you don't have to hike up there. That's going to be a pain. Because I'm on, you know, crutches basically and a single boot, and hiking up deep, waist deep snow is not easy. I'm doing it. I'm kind of not going to say no to anything. So I kept doing that. They got some shots. Later on, they had made this big jump. It was a good sized jump. And these guys are throwing helicopters, 720s. And at the time, those were like, wow. And they tell me again, yeah, now kids are doing like triple backflips and yeah.
Right.
So they tell me again, like, you don't have to jump. You don't have to do this. Like, we'll have plenty of other sections where we can use you and everything else. And I'm like, I'll hit it. Like,
oh man.
All right. So yeah, and I ski into this thing, and I am just launching myself, just skying and kind of landing, but
what's the mentality? So you're launching this thing, and I mean, there's the celluloid guts, right, or whatever they call it, you know, celluloid balls maybe, where you're
Kodak courage.
You get the Kodak courage, right? Where it's like they stick a camera in your face and you're going to do something that you never would have done. Was it that, or was it like, this is my shot, like this is it, this is the big time?
It was a little bit of both, and again, I grew up like I said, I skied with all these snowboarders. That's what we did. That's what we did all day long, was go and like hit one jump 15 times. And you know, growing up in the East, we ski. There's ice back here. Everything hurts. It's hard, right? You know, the snow out there is perfect. Like, you can literally just throw yourself off of this thing 43 through the air and just like land in the snow, and you'd be fine.
Even if you don't land it, you're still okay. Nothing's really bad gonna happen to you. Yeah.
I knew the snow would be soft, and so I hit this thing multiple times. And at the end of the day, at the end of the filming, 2 or 3 days later, they asked me a question, and I knew when they asked me it was a very important question. They kind of ask you all these interview questions, and they said, if you can ski anywhere in the world, where would you want to ski? And I'm like, they're asking me this for a reason. And I said, well, I've never been helicopter skiing. And I said, that looks like it would be unbelievable. And so sure enough, they called me like a few months later and said, hey, we want to use you and somebody else for a whole segment. We're going to go to Mike Wigley's like world premiere helicopter skiing resort. up in BC, and they kind of even let me pick who I wanted to bring, and I ended up going and saying, Monty would be a good sidekick for this whole thing.
Hold on, and explain that to a certain extent. Monty would be a good sidekick. You guys have the same size feet, right? So, or same size foot. So, and you were both on Rosignol when you were skiing, and you would share a pair of boots, right? Isn't that how it worked?
Well, even that, the Rosignol sponsorship came from the Warren Miller thing, because I had filmed with Max Burby, and I was skiing in Vail after that film, and all of a sudden somebody yells at me from the chairlift, Jason, very recognizable, not a lot of one-legged guys out there. And it's Max Burby with this guy, George Cooperthwaite, who was, I think, head of Rosignol, like soft goods maybe, or something like, very high up in Rosignol. Meet us at the bottom. So I end up skiing with them for the day. Asked me, do you have a ski sponsor? No, I've been trying to get that. I've been trying to, work one out. We got a ski sponsorship through him because of that. And which now, as you know, anybody that ski racing is so expensive, and having the right gear, and like I had trainers and racers, and I was fully, full sponsorship.
Right.
Yes, Monty and I, our birthdays are less than a month apart. We're the same age. I'm missing my left leg above the knee. He's missing his right leg above the knee. We both have the same size feet. I ended up kind of introducing him to the Rossi guy, and he switched brands and was sponsored by them as well. So yes, we got one pair of boots that we shared, and it's like, kind of like my Siamese twin. And to this day, he's like one of my best friends. He's just a great guy. Taught me a lot without knowing it, I think, adjusting after my accident. So yeah, and you talk about, like you said, this is name tags and being labeled, and it's a bit of a struggle when your life changes. I grew up and identified with myself as an athlete and everything else, and all of a sudden that completely changes, and now I'm quote unquote disabled, and nobody wants to be that, so I want to be an athlete. I want to do what I want to do, and I want to live my life as normal as I possibly can. And the other thing was, I've never, and Monty well, like, is there anybody you've ever met that's more comfortable in their skin than him?
Right.
And
just flat out funny too.
And people are attracted to that. And I think that's important. And when I work with, so everybody I work with now has gone through some sort of life-changing experience. Everybody I work with is missing a limb, and it's one of the things that I learned from Monty. It's like, it's how you present yourself in a sense. Think about it if you're in school and you go into the cafeteria and there's a kid that's sitting there in the corner that's, kind of ho-hum, and like, you might go over there to try to console, hey, are you okay? You're not necessarily attracted to that, versus the kid that everybody's like laughing and having a good time and kind of the life of the party. It's like, I want to be over there, I want to be part of that. And that was Monty. He was always, he's very funny, very comfortable in his skin, never seemingly self-conscious or embarrassed or anything like that. And I kind of thought it was an eye-opener, because I spent a lot of years staying away from adaptive sports because I'm not disabled, that label, I'm not taking that label, that name tag. But then I started to realize, I had met Monty and guys like you and Sarah and Greg Menino, like, these are real deal athletes. Like, they're not just someone that's, that ended up in this scenario, oh, I'll learn how to ski. And that's another thing I'd like to tell people, is like, whatever is inside of you, whatever your makeup is prior to the injury, that's still in you. That doesn't necessarily change. If you're a father, you're still a father. If you're if you're an athlete, you're still an athlete. You may have to adapt And I love the name adaptive sports these days because I think it's the most accurate description of what we do. Because you're doing the same thing, you're just figuring out a different way to do it. And, disabled sports, it's like Paul Martin, who's a friend of mine, and I think you know him as well, missing his leg below the knee from a car accident. He's done Hawaii Ironman like 5 times. So 112-mile bike, full marathon, 26 miles, 3-mile swim. He tells a story about being in the competition and some German guy, he passes this German guy on a prosthetic leg. And this German guy, as he goes by him, says in a very thick Arnold Schwarzenegger-like accident, disabled my ass. It's like he's passing him, So that's the point is, he's an athlete, he's a competitor. The shell didn't change that. He figured out a way to do what he loved doing.
So you brought Monty up to Mike Wigley's. And so Mike Wigley's they were like the original helicopter skiing, right? The original heli skiing. Is that true?
I believe so. He was an Austrian guy, and they found this plot of land in Canada, and they started this operation, and it still exists. And it is, there's plenty of other helicopter operations now, but this one's like 5-star. Like, the lodging and the housing is unbelievably beautiful. The little cabins that you stayed in, they had old A-frame ones, but then they had the new cabins, which, you lived in Vail. So if you put that house on Vail, it would be a multi-million-dollar home. The bank every night was, they're serving crab and prime rib and, like lobster. And it was unbelievable. So, one, the conditions are phenomenal. It's just like you get in this helicopter and you lift off your own little private helicopter pad in front of your little private cabin. And it drops you off on the top of these mountains. And even that experience in and of itself was unbelievable, because the helicopter leaves and it's dead silent and you see nothing but snow-covered peaks for any way you look. There's no end to it. And it's like, wow, if they don't come back, we're screwed.
This is kind of like growing up in New Hampshire, right? It's the same kind of thing. Like for me, growing up back in Mount Tom and those kinds of things in Massachusetts. So you're in the middle of the bugaboos. It is just pristine powder. The funny thing also too in the movie, because it's like, this is like that movie Armageddon, right? Where these guys are going to go shoot the meteor. And so you get out of the helicopter and it's like, we're the coolest beings on Earth. And you guys are pulling that off, but you're also pulling that off, hopping along on one foot. So you've got like the cool guy walk, but it's a hop.
Yeah. I mean, and we both have had the opportunity to ski with some of the best skiers in the world, disabled and able-bodied, and you automatically kind of get that respect, And I talk about guys like you, and to this day, it's like, again, people complaining about stuff. Oh, I can't carry my skis. I'm like, you haven't seen anything till you've seen someone like Chris, like wheeling himself in his chair through a parking lot in 3 inches of nasty slush with, 2 pairs of downhill skis under his chin. And it's, so I mean, you automatically, it's just like, okay, that guy's badass. I apologize for the language. I'm trying not to go Bobby McMullen level with the F-bombs, but.
What did they make of you? Because you were skiing, you're skiing with Monty, but there was a guide there. So how's the protocol work on this, where they're like, hey, look, this is where you can go, or this is where you can't go, or go wherever you want to go? How did it work?
There was definitely precautions. I mean, the guides that they have there are top notch. They're looking at snowpack, because it's it's dangerous. And in one of those films, so you asked what films, I was in Snow Riders, Snow Riders 2, Free Riders, and 50. So it was a series of four films in a row. They were pretty creative with their names. But in one of them, I'm coming down it's a pretty steep face, and the top, probably 6 inches of snow starts sloughing off. And basically what that means is it's almost like an avalanche. If it had gone deeper, it would have been an avalanche. But when the top layers, so if it's 6 inches of snow, all of a sudden that's sliding as fast as you're going, maybe even faster. But and as I'm doing it, I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is gonna be a great shot, you know. But it didn't get too bad. And so they're constantly kind of like, yeah, that's too risky. And I think they realize that that we could have gotten probably in trouble relatively quick. But again, if you see the footage, it's not tame by any means. There's some pretty steep stuff, but they're pretty safe. And those guides, you know, they make their living providing people with an unbelievable ski experience and keeping them safe. But we got to go places where the general public wouldn't go, if you will.
That's awesome. And you launched some pretty big stuff too, right? I mean, dropping like some 30, 40 footers kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say the one was easily, I would say it was probably between, it's probably 40, 45 feet, which is an accurate 40, 45 feet. People are like, oh, it's a 50-foot cliff. You're like, yeah, no, that's like 30. So it was a good size. I actually, again, you talk about risks, and I got lucky on that. I think I had sent you a clip, and it's in that, the one that I dropped. And if you freeze it just at the right moment when I land, there's actually a rock the size of a couch, like probably 3 feet next to me. So if I had gone like 3 feet to the left, I pretty much would have landed on that rock. And it was kind of, but I didn't. So yeah, it was pretty big stuff. And honestly, it was a good size. I haven't seen many other one-leggers do something that big, I suppose. But the snow was perfect, soft landing.
So we've talked about your relationship with your son, and you're passing on, and in a lot of ways, you've got that same testosterone thing where you're passing that on to him, and to a certain extent, how is it with a daughter? You're raising a daughter as well. Is that different? Does that bring out something different in you?
I suppose, you know, out of our family, I would say she's the best one. Like she's
really.
She's pretty, she's like always happy, for one thing. And she has just a great attitude, and she's pretty conscious of people and their, you know, and she's very helpful and is conscious of people's emotions. And she picks up on stuff like that. And so she's great. And the other thing is I'm very lucky, like, you know, my son, again, he's 16 now, and at this point, you know, you get to that age where he's hanging with his friends probably more than I see him these days. But I was very lucky that he loves skiing, he loves mountain biking, like he loves everything that I love, and that's very lucky. He could have been, you know, he could have hated that stuff.
Yeah. And you get that bond. The things that you love that you can continue to do, even if he's like, dad's not that cool now, but every once in a while you can be cool. Are you still cool with your daughter too? Does she think you're cool, or how does that work?
Yeah, I think so. And she ski races as well, and absolutely loves ski racing. And she loves water skiing, and I enjoy that as well. So it's kind of like the best of both worlds. She's getting to that age now where, like I said, she just turned 13. She's in 8th grade, and all of a sudden it's just like, you know, seems to be in the bathroom a little bit more, and the outfits are a little bit more put together, and, you know, where
you're talking about your outfits.
No. Absolutely. No, so like this summer, like I said, I like water skiing. I love water skiing, and we have a boat. And unfortunately, with late Sunapee, you got to be up early because there's so many boats on the lake that it gets rough very quick. And she would always be down for like, okay, we're gonna leave the house at 6:30. Okay, she'll be up like making her breakfast, ready to go. And so she loves it, and she loves ski racing and skiing, and so I'm very, very fortunate that I have kids that enjoy the things that I enjoy. And that's, yeah, what more could you ask for? I'm trying not to screw them up.
Well, it's also a good excuse for you to continue to stay in shape as you're getting older, to be able to share these experiences with your kids. Have you noticed the little slowing down, or have they noticed a little slowing down in dad?
Yeah, a little bit. This year, with the COVID and everything else, so I downhill mountain bike as well, and that's some high risk stuff that I enjoy doing. Although this year I really haven't been riding that much. Part of it is, again, the COVID thing, and because I'm downhilling, that means I'm riding a chairlift up, and it's all gravity based stuff. So there's lift lines, and the other thing is, my son now is riding with other people, and well, not necessarily other people, but it's not quite as fun as it's been. So I've backed off that a little bit. I'm not doing that quite as much, and yeah, things are starting to hurt. Like all the time. so that's happened. You don't bounce back quite as much, but I still ski like a madman, but the strength's not quite there.
The strength's not quite there. You just have to be more technically sound. That's the way it goes. You just have to ski well.
That old move of getting thrown in the back seat and actually dragging my rear on the ground and being able to actually muscle pop right back up and keep going. If I get to that position now, I'm kind of staying there. I'm not popping back up.
So as a prosthetist, we'll get you out on this one. This will be the last question. As a prosthetist, what's the message? Is there a message that you give to your clients, like people who are coming in, who are new, who are getting their first leg? Is there a message that you give to them?
I mean, it's a combination of all those things that we were talking about. And like I said, it's a life-changing experience, and I'm not only working with that person, but sometimes it's their family members. Sometimes you have the dad that comes in and he's got the 13-year-old daughter or the 10-year-old daughter that, well, my dad was my soccer coach, and now what? And it's like, yeah, he's still going to be your dad. Like, and that's what I mean. Whatever was there before is still there. So that's part of the message. The other part is that you have to have that inner drive, and you will be able to do most all the things that you like doing before. You might have to do them differently, and that might be frustrating, but it really is when you look at what we see in the media these days in adaptive sports. I mean, look at that guy Trevor. He's a monoskier. He's doing,
Trevor
he's a New Hampshire guy
who launched off of Corbett's.
Yes.
Like,
can you even imagine? Now, part of it, and like I said, to be fair, like what the shadow that you were in, you would have like triple, quadruple front flipped off of that first impact and been down in the basin by the time you hit the second time. So the equipment's way better, but it's unbelievable.
He bounced probably like 10 feet off the ground. I mean,
He
went off that, and that's like a 30, 40 foot drop or whatever.
Yeah.
And he bounced like double bounce, landed, bounced, and was like 10 feet in the air. Yeah, I'm not taking anything away from him. I mean, the technology is definitely better. I mean, he's skiing in a Dynaccess, which is what I'm skiing in, and I'm pretty sure he is. And he skis on Vogel, which, that's got to help him as well.
But you can do that now, is what you're saying.
No. I'm glad that this young kid is out there ripping it up and doing it. And yeah, I mean, you see some of the things people are pushing it, but that's also it's kind of the generational thing, isn't it? That you stand on the shoulders of those who went before you, and you hope to push it a little bit further. But yeah, now looking at it, I'm going, I'm glad I'm old. I don't know if I would have wanted to try that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it is unbelievable, and you're right. It is what people did before, but yeah, honestly, with people that are going through this type of thing, it doesn't, you can't let it define you. Yes, you've been given an extra challenge, and you just have to learn to kind of adapt and overcome that to the best that you can. And you're gonna have good days and you're gonna have bad days, but I try to lead by an example and say, look, I still live a pretty normal lifestyle, and that's not necessarily over.
I don't know if it's normal. It's probably abnormal, right? I mean, probably you're on the other end of the spectrum. You're doing more than 95% of the people out there, and thoroughly enjoying what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably some truth to that, but I mean, I guess the point is, when I say normal, it's what I choose to do. It's not. I'm not saying, oh, I can't do that. And the accomplishments that I have had and that you've had, and it's that stuff is possible. It takes a lot of drive. It takes a lot of commitment, and you just, that whole never give up thing it's kind of cliche, but you touched on something earlier, which I think is really important. Is that fear of failure is probably the most crippling thing that there is. If you talk to any successful business person, generally it's like, yeah, I had 3 failed businesses prior to this happening. Every athlete, Bodie Miller, again, talked about in his talks, like, I probably crashed more than anybody else on the World Cup, kind of thing. And that's, but he knew, and he said, that wasn't a failure. I learned something from that. And everybody, again, it's cliche, everybody does fail, and you just, it's going to happen. Embrace it, try to learn from it, and keep going. That's all you can do.
Yeah, that is the biggest obstacle, isn't it? If you let the fear stop you, let the fear of failure stop you, you're guaranteed not to do anything.
Yeah, there's a book called Fearless, and it's about a Navy SEAL. His name was Adam Brown, I think, and it's not a difficult read. You should read it. It is unbelievable what this guy goes through. I mean, he literally was a drug addict at one point, and the fact that he even got into the military at all is absolutely amazing. But he was kind of given a break, and it literally was just a never give up kind of thing. He ended up getting shot. I think part of his hand was shot off, his shooting hand, and he was a sniper. So he learned to shoot with his other hand, and still was like dominant, top marksman. Lost sight in the eye that he was supposed to use to look down his sniper rifle, and it's crazy. Like it's worth reading. It's unbelievable. But that's it. It's like every challenge, you just like, all right, I'm gonna do this differently, but I'm gonna do it.
That is awesome. Well, certainly the fear can prevent you from doing what you want to do is great wisdom. But you also gave us a great perspective earlier on when you said everybody's going to be miserable. And if I can convince myself that I'm not going to be miserable, I have an advantage. And you did go back to skiing in the rain, and having grown up in New England, I always felt like that was an opportunity. Skiing in the rain, it was an opportunity that I might get a chance to beat somebody that I'd never beaten before, and realize I might be able to actually beat this person, because he might think, hey, I'm not giving him my all. This is rain. It's miserable. And I'm like, I love it, and it's like, if I can figure out a way to love it, that is absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your wisdom with us. For our audience, this clip with Jason, our podcast will be on the One Revolution channel after this, you can go and watch the whole thing. You can watch it. It'll be archived there. It will also be on the One Revolution channel on YouTube. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Jason, for giving us your time. Now you can go back and hang out with your family. Maybe your son will even be home. And thanks again, and look forward to skiing with you sometime in the future.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Chris. Great seeing you. And thanks everybody for tuning in and listening.
Take care. Thanks a lot.